A lone rider comes closer. The landscape around him is barren, devoid of life, and the sky above is a dull, oppressive grey. Each step of the horse echoes in the silence, a haunting rhythm that matches the rider's somber mood. Dust trails behind him like smoke from a dying fire. The wind picks up, swirling the dust into ghostly shapes that dance and then disappear. The rider's cloak flutters, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Usher Mansion rises up, menacing, strange. Its once grand facade now crumbles, overtaken by time and neglect. The fog wraps around it like a shroud, hiding its secrets and adding to its ominous presence. Our rider is an old friend, here to see Roderick Usher in his lonely old family home. He remembers the mansion from his youth, but it feels different now, more sinister, as if it has absorbed the sorrow of its inhabitants. Roderick, the last son in a long and troubled family, is sick. His once bright eyes are now dull, filled with a deep, unshakable sadness. The weight of his family's cursed history seems to rest heavily on his frail shoulders. His letter was full of fear, begging for company. The words were shaky, almost desperate, as if written by a man on the brink of madness. He spoke of strange sounds, of shadows that moved on their own, and of a growing sense of dread that he could not escape. The friend gets off his horse. The air feels heavy, filled with a nameless dread. He hesitates for a moment, feeling the weight of the mansion's dark history pressing down on him, but he steels himself and moves forward, determined to help his old friend. He feels uneasy right away. A worry settles deep inside him. Something is very wrong. The silence is oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house. He can't shake the feeling that they are not alone, that unseen eyes are watching their every move. The Usher family is very old, filled with generations of dark secrets and terrible things. Roderick, the last son, is consumed by an unknown fear, haunted by what his ancestors did. Roderick Usher is wasting away, his senses painfully sharp. He is tormented by the decaying mansion, a reflection of his family's downfall. He lives in constant fear. His twin sister, Madeline, suffers from a strange sickness. She is fading, becoming a ghost in the dark halls. Their connection is strong, a twisted reflection of the house's two sides. The mansion is a symbol of decay. Once a grand estate, it now stands as a haunting reminder of time's relentless march. The walls, once pristine and white, are now stained with the passage of years, covered in moss and creeping ivy. The roof sags under the weight of neglect, and the windows, once sparkling with life, are now dark and empty. Cracks crawl along the walls like sickly veins, mirroring the broken mind of its inhabitants. These fissures tell a story of abandonment and despair, each one a testament to the slow, inevitable decline. The walls seem to whisper secrets of the past, of happier times now long forgotten. The windows are like empty eyes, staring into nothingness. They once framed views of vibrant gardens and bustling activity, but now they only reflect the emptiness within. The glass is clouded with dust, and the frames are warped and cracked, much like the souls of those who once lived here. Inside, it's dark and heavy, filled with thick velvet curtains and creepy tapestries that seem to move in the flickering candlelight. The air is thick with a sense of foreboding, as if the very walls are closing in. The furniture, once luxurious, is now covered in a thick layer of dust, and the once vibrant colours have faded to dull, lifeless shades. The air is thick with dust and the smell of rot. Every breath is a struggle, as if the house itself is trying to suffocate those who dare to enter. The floors creak underfoot, and the walls seem to groan with the weight of their own decay. It's a place where time stands still, and every moment feels like an eternity. Roderick's art shows his troubled mind. His paintings are dark and unsettling, filled with twisted, nightmarish images that seem to come alive in the dim light. Each piece is a window into his soul, revealing the torment and anguish that he tries to hide from the world. Strange music grates on the nerves. The haunting melodies echo through the halls, adding to the sense of unease. It's as if the music itself is alive, a malevolent presence that feeds on the fear and despair of those who hear it. The notes are dissonant and jarring, creating a cacophony that is both mesmerizing and terrifying. His paintings are filled with dark, unsettling images, nightmares that hint at the horror to come. Each brushstroke is a cry for help, a desperate attempt to make sense of the madness that consumes him. The images are haunting and grotesque, a reflection of the darkness that lurks within his mind. The visitor tries to comfort his old friend. He speaks in soothing tones, trying to dispel the shadows that cling to Roderick's mind. But his words seem to fall on deaf ears, as if Roderick is trapped in a world of his own making, unable to escape the horrors that haunt him. He tries to explain the strange things happening, blaming the house's age and isolation. He talks of drafts and creaking floors, of the natural decay that comes with time. But even as he speaks, he can't shake the feeling that there is something more sinister at work, something that defies explanation. But even he can't ignore the growing feeling of dread. It's a palpable presence, a weight that presses down on him, making it hard to breathe. The house seems to be alive, watching and waiting, its decaying walls hiding secrets that are better left undiscovered. One night, Roderick shares his biggest fear. He believes the house is alive, that its decay is feeding an evil being. He believes it will destroy them. His fears seem to come from a prophecy. The Ushers, he believes, are cursed. They will be punished for their sins. The house, he whispers, wants a sacrifice. The visitor tries to reason with Roderick, to bring him back from the edge of madness. But Roderick is too far gone, lost in his own terror. He is losing touch with reality. Madeline's sickness gets worse. Her once vibrant spirit now seems to be fading away, leaving behind a shell of her former self. The illness is relentless, draining her energy and casting a dark shadow over her existence. Each day she grows weaker, her eyes reflecting a deep, haunting sorrow that chills the very air around her. She moves like a ghost through the dark halls. Her presence is eerie, almost otherworldly, as if she is already halfway between this world and the next. The long, empty corridors echo with the soft rustle of her gown, a sound that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who hears it. You feel her more than you see her. Her brother's sadness grows. One night, Madeline dies, or so they think. Roderick is heartbroken. His grief is palpable, a heavy weight that seems to crush his very soul. He cannot bear the thought of losing her, and the house itself seems to mourn with him, its walls echoing his sorrow. He insists on burying her inside the house in the family tomb below. The crypt is cold and dark, a fitting resting place for someone who seemed to belong more to the shadows than to the light. As the coffin is lowered into the tomb, a sense of finality settles over the house, but also a lingering unease. Days turn into a painful forever. Time seems to stand still, each moment stretching into an eternity of grief and despair. Roderick is consumed by his sorrow, unable to move on, trapped in a never-ending cycle of mourning. The house, too, seems to be caught in this timeless limbo, its very walls steeped in sadness. Roderick wanders the halls, a ghost haunted by his sister's ghost. He is a shadow of his former self, his eyes hollow and haunted. The once grand halls of the house now feel like a labyrinth of sorrow, each corner hiding a memory of Madeline, each step echoing with the pain of her loss. He stares at her portrait, sure she is not at peace. The visitor has nightmares. The portrait seems to come alive in the flickering candlelight, Madeline's eyes following him wherever he goes. The visitor too is affected, plagued by nightmares that blur the line between reality and the supernatural. The house is a living entity, feeding off their fear and sorrow. The line between real and unreal blurs. The house seems to play tricks on the mind, its dark corners hiding unspeakable horrors. Shadows move where there should be none, and whispers echo through the empty rooms. It becomes impossible to tell what is real and what is a figment of a tormented mind. The house seems to close in, suffocating, inescapable. The walls feel like they are closing in, the air growing thicker and harder to breathe. It is as if the house itself is alive, a malevolent force that seeks to trap its inhabitants in a never-ending nightmare. There is no escape, only the suffocating embrace of the haunted mansion. A storm rages outside. Thunder shakes the Usher mansion. Inside, the visitor tries to read to forget the growing terror. Roderick bursts in. He's frantic. He whispers in fear. He hears noises, scratching, moaning. He is sure Madeline is alive, buried alive. The visitor tries to calm Roderick. He says his fears are just bad dreams caused by grief and the storm, but even as he speaks, doubts eat at him. The storm gets worse, just like the terror in the house. Roderick is completely lost in his madness. He paces like a trapped animal, his eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, a terrifying scream echoes through the house. Roderick spins around, his face twisted in horror. "Madman!" he screams. "I tell you, she is at the door!" The doors fly open, revealing a figure in white, Madeline. Covered in blood, her eyes empty, she throws herself on Roderick. He collapses, his life draining away. The visitor runs from the house in terror as the storm reaches its peak. He runs blindly through the night, the screams of the damned ringing in his ears. Behind him, the house cracks and groans. A huge crack opens in the ground, swallowing the Usher mansion and its secrets. The storm suddenly stops. Silence falls. The House of Usher is gone. The story of the House of Usher is a scary look into the human mind. It reminds us that our worst fears often live inside us, and sometimes they can destroy us.